At my grandmother's anniversary, my mother loudly said, "It's a shame you couldn't give her great grandkids like your brothers." Everyone fell awkwardly silent, but I smiled. Everyone has their path. That evening, I emailed my lawyer to amend the mortgage agreement for my parents' house, which I'd secretly paid for 5 years. 2 weeks later, they got a notice to pay the full remaining amount or vacate. When my mother called in tears, I said, "I decided to spend money on myself since I don't spend it on kids." After long negotiations, they used all their savings to keep the house. Now, the topic of my lack of children never comes up at family gatherings. I never thought I'd be that person, the one who nukes a family relationship over a single comment. But honestly, sometimes a single comment is just the final Jenga piece that brings the whole tower crashing down. It was supposed to be a chill day celebrating Grandma's 80th. Everyone was there. My 2 brothers with their picture-perfect families, cousins from out of state, the whole 9 yards. I rolled up in my Tesla. Yeah, I splurged on myself last year. Perks of being child-free with a killer job in tech. Rocking a cute sundress from Anthropology that probably cost more than my mom's entire outfit. The backyard was decked out with those Pinterest-worthy decorations my sister-in-law Jen always manages to pull off. White fairy lights strung across the patio, mason jars with wildflowers, the works. My nieces and nephews were running around like tiny tornadoes while the adults sipped on mimosas and pretended not to be exhausted. "There she is," my dad called out when I walked through the gate. "The big shot executive finally makes an appearance." I gave him a quick hug. Traffic on the 405 was brutal. Some of us had to work this morning. That earned me an eye roll from my brother Mark. He's always been Dad's mini-me, working at the family construction business since he was old enough to hold a hammer. His wife Melissa gave me a sympathetic smile, bouncing their youngest on her hip. "Well, you're here now," Grandma said, patting the seat next to her. "Come tell me about this promotion I heard about. That's Grandma for you. Never misses a detail about anyone's life, even at 80. I sat down and filled her in on my recent promotion to VP while she nodded approvingly. Unlike my parents, Grandma never gave me grief about my life choices. She was a career woman herself, back when that wasn't really a thing, teaching high school chemistry until she was 70. "I'm proud of you, honey," she said, squeezing my hand. "You remind me of myself sometimes." The afternoon was going pretty smooth. We had burgers and hot dogs from the grill, potato salad that Aunt Linda swears is an old family recipe but is definitely store-bought, and enough Bud Light to keep my Uncle Bob talking about his fishing trips for hours. Then came the cake and the toasts. Everyone said something nice about Grandma, sharing memories and well wishes. When it was my mom's turn, she started off normal enough. "Mom, you've been my rock for 60 years, she said, getting a little misty-eyed. "I'm so blessed to have you, as my mother and as a grandmother to my children." She gestured toward my brothers and their kids. Then she looked at me, and I knew what was coming before the words left her mouth. "It's just a shame that you couldn't give her great-grandkids like your brothers did." The patio went dead silent. Even the kids seemed to sense the tension and stopped running around. My face burned hot, but I kept my expression neutral while taking a long sip of my drink. "Well," I finally said, my voice steady as I set down my glass. "Everyone has their path, right?" The conversation awkwardly moved on, but the damage was done. It wasn't like this was the first time my mom had made comments about my lack of children. Since I hit 30, it's been a constant drip of biological clock references and forwarded articles about freezing eggs. But saying it in front of the entire family, on Grandma's special day, that was a new low update. Y'all, I can't believe the support I'm getting here. Never expected this to blow up overnight. Some of you are calling me petty, others are calling me a queen. Truth is, I was just done. My family didn't know about the mortgage situation. I'd been quietly helping them for years. Want to know the wildest part? The mortgage wasn't even the biggest secret I was keeping from them. Should I tell them about the other arrangement too? What no one at that party knew, what no one in my family knew, was that for the past 5 years, I'd been secretly paying the mortgage on my parents' house. They thought they were making payments to Bank of America, but in reality, I had bought out their mortgage during the 2020 financial squeeze when Dad's business nearly went under. I set up a shell company to manage it so they'd never know it was me. They continued making their normal payments, but to me instead of the bank. Why did I do it? Partly because I could. My tech job pays stupid money, and I live pretty modestly, despite the occasional splurge. But mostly because, despite everything, they're still my parents. Dad's too proud to accept help, and Mom would never let me hear the end of it if she knew I was wasting money on them instead of starting a family. But that night, after I drove home from the party with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, I'd had enough. I poured myself a generous glass of Tito's, sat down at my laptop, and fired off an email to my lawyer. "Ted, I need to make changes to the Morrison property agreement. Call me tomorrow." Ted called bright and early the next morning. "So what's up with your parents' place?" he asked after exchanging pleasantries. "I want to change the terms. No more. Monthly payments. They need to pay the remaining balance in full within 30 days or vacate." There was a pause on the line. "That's pretty harsh. Did something happen?" "Just family stuff, Ted. Can you make it happen or not?" He could, and he did. The paperwork was updated and official notices were sent out. I almost chickened out twice, my finger hovering over Ted's number to call the whole thing off. But each time, I'd remember my mom's comment, and every other dig she'd made over the years about my choice not to have kids. 2 weeks later, my phone blew up with notifications. First my dad, then my mom, then both my brothers all calling within minutes of each other. I let them go to voicemail. Eventually, I listened to my mom's message. Sweetie, there's been some kind of mistake with the mortgage company. They're saying, we need to pay $187,000 in 30 days or they'll foreclose. Your father is beside himself. Please call back when you get this. I waited until the next day to call her back, giving myself time to steel my resolve. Hi, Mom. Got your message. What's going on? She explained the situation through tears, talking about how they'd never missed a payment, how there must be some mix-up with the bank. It's not a mix-up, I said, my voice calm. I'm the one who holds your mortgage, have been for 5 years. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought she might have hung up. What are you talking about? Remember when Dad almost lost the business in 2020? I bought your mortgage. You've been paying me, not the bank, and now I'm calling it due. But we can't possibly. Why would you do this? Is this about what I said at the party? Honey, I didn't mean, it's not just the party, Mom. It's every comment, every passive-aggressive remark, every time you've made me feel less than because I chose career over children. I've been financially supporting you while you belittle my life choices, so I decided to spend that money on myself instead, since I don't spend it on kids, right? The negotiations that followed were tense. My brothers got involved, accusing me of being vindictive and cruel. Dad barely spoke to me at all. Eventually, they scraped together the money, cashing out their retirement accounts early, with penalties, selling their vacation cabin in Lake Tahoe, and borrowing some from my oldest brother. I didn't feel the satisfaction I expected. Mostly, I felt tired, but something fundamental had changed in our family dynamic. Update. Okay, folks, things have taken a turn. My brothers are calling me nonstop. Dad's not speaking to me at all, and Mom's gone from crying to sending these weird, guilt-trippy texts quoting the Bible. Meanwhile, Grandma just invited me for tea tomorrow. Just the two of us. She doesn't know about the mortgage situation, but she's always been scary perceptive. Should I come clean with her? Or is bringing her into this drama at her age just another mistake? And what do I say when she inevitably asks why Mom and Dad suddenly can't afford to host Sunday dinners anymore? That first family dinner after everything went down was something straight out of a Jordan Peele movie. Smiles stretched too tight, conversation unnaturally polite, everyone avoiding the elephant in the room. My brothers' wives kept shooting. Me these looks like I might pull out a knife and stab someone over dessert. The topic of children, specifically my lack thereof, never came up. Not once. It was actually kind of eerie after years of it being their favorite conversation starter. How's work? My dad asked stiffly while passing the mashed potatoes. Good, I replied. We just landed the Robertson account. That's nice. And that was that. No follow-up questions, no passive-aggressive comments about how I was married to my job, just awkward silence. After dinner, I found Grandma in the kitchen, supposedly helping clean up, but really just sitting at the table watching everyone else work. Walk with me, she said, nodding toward the back door. It wasn't a request. We strolled around the neighborhood as the sun set, neither of us speaking for the first block. Finally, she broke the silence. Your mother told me what happened with the house? I tensed up. Did she tell you why? She said you were upset about a comment she made at my party. Grandma gave me a side eye that could cut glass. But I'm guessing there's more to it than that. So I told her everything. About the years of comments, the constant pressure, the judgment, about how I'd secretly helped them financially while they criticized the very choices that made that help possible. Grandma listened without interrupting, her face unreadable in the twilight. When I finished, she was quiet for so long I started to worry. You know, she finally said, your grandfather and I couldn't have children for the first 10 years of our marriage. This was news to me. But you had Mom and Uncle Dave? Yes, eventually. But for a long time, doctors told me it wasn't possible. People were cruel back then about women who couldn't have babies, called us barren, like we were worthless land. She shook her head at the memory. My own mother-in-law once asked your grandfather, right in front of me, if he regretted marrying a woman who couldn't give him sons. That's awful, I said, genuinely shocked. It was. And when I finally did get pregnant with your mother, those same people acted like I'd finally done something worthwhile with my life. She stopped walking and turned to face me. So I understand. Something about having your worth tied to your reproductive choices. I felt tears prick at my eyes. I never knew. Well, we didn't talk about such things back then. She started walking again. What you did with the mortgage was harsh, maybe too harsh. My heart sank a little. But, she continued, sometimes people need a shock to their system before they can see how they've been behaving. Your mother has always been stubborn that way. She linked her arm through mine as we turned back toward the house. Just don't let this fester too long, she advised. You've made your point. Now decide if you want to be right or if you want to have a relationship with your parents. The next few months were a strange adjustment period. My parents downsized to a smaller house that they could afford outright with what they had left after paying me. It was in a less prestigious neighborhood, and I could tell it killed my status-conscious mom a little bit every time she had to give out her new address. My dad went back to work full-time, postponing the semi-retirement he'd been planning. He wouldn't accept any help from me, not that I offered directly. Instead, I made sure he got connected with some high-end clients through my business network, a coincidence he was suspicious of but couldn't prove. As for my brothers, Mark eventually came around. He showed up at my place one night with a six-pack of that craft IPA I like and an awkward apology. I still think you went nuclear over something. That could have been handled with a conversation, he said, picking at the label on his beer bottle. But I get why you were upset. Mom's been on Melissa's case about having another baby, and it's causing problems between us. Really? I thought. You guys were the golden children who could do no wrong. He snorted. Yeah, until we didn't give her a granddaughter. 3 grandsons apparently isn't diverse enough. We actually had a decent talk that night, the first real conversation we'd had in years without the weight of family expectations crushing it. My other brother, Jason, took longer to thaw, but eventually he too seemed to realize that our parents' behavior wasn't always healthy. Update. Final update, y'all. Had my 1-year anniversary dinner with the family last night since the incident. And let me tell you, so much has changed. Mom pulled me aside for a private chat in the kitchen. I was ready for round 2, but what she said actually left me speechless. Meanwhile, Grandma was watching us from across the room with this little knowing smile. Got me thinking, did Grandma orchestrate this whole reconciliation behind the scenes? And the biggest question, after everything that happened, should I tell them about my secret plan for next year? About 6 months after the mortgage showdown, my mom called and asked if we could meet for coffee, just the 2 of us. We met at this little indie place halfway between our houses, neutral territory. She looked older somehow, the lines around her eyes deeper than I remembered. For a moment, I felt a twinge of guilt, wondering if I'd caused that. Then I remembered all the times her words had made me feel small, and my resolve hardened. I've been seeing a therapist, she said after we got our drinks, dropping this bombshell, like she was commenting on the weather. I nearly choked on my cold brew. You? Therapy? The woman who once told Aunt Kathy that therapy was just paying someone to listen to you complain? She had the grace to look embarrassed. Yes, well, losing the house, it made me do some thinking. About why it was so important to me that you have children. About why I couldn't just be happy for your success. I stayed quiet, stirring my drink. My therapist helped me realize I've been projecting my own regrets onto you. I gave up my career when I had your brothers, and part of me always wondered what could have been. Mom, you never told me you had career dreams. I was going to be a paralegal, had a job lined up at Jenkins and Bauer right out of school. She smiled faintly. But then I got pregnant with Mark, and in those days, well, you know how it was. Actually, I didn't know. She'd never talked about this before. Anyway, she continued, I'm not saying this excuses how I've treated you. I'm just trying to explain. And to say I'm sorry. I'll be honest, I didn't fully believe her at first. Years of passive-aggressive behavior don't get erased with one coffee date and an apology, but over the following months she really did seem to be making an effort. She asked about my work with genuine interest. She stopped sending me articles about fertility treatments, and most importantly, she started standing up for me when relatives made comments about my childless state. At Thanksgiving, when Aunt Kathy asked if I was still focusing on career instead of family, my mom actually interrupted. She's built an impressive life on her own terms, Kathy. We're very proud. The look of shock on my face must have been comical because Grandma, sitting across the table, winked at me over her wine glass. Dad took longer to come around. I think his pride was hurt more than anything else, both by needing my financial help in the first place and by how things went down afterward. But eventually, he showed up at my condo with his toolbox, insisting on fixing that leaky faucet I'd mentioned offhand weeks ago. While he worked, he cleared his throat awkwardly. Your grandmother showed me some articles about how millennial women face different pressures than women in our day. I bit back a smile, imagining Grandma sitting my dad down for sensitivity training. That so? He focused intently on tightening a bolt. Made me think about some things, how we might have put some unfair expectations on you. Coming from my dad, this was practically a tearful confession on Oprah. Thanks, Dad, I said simply. Sometimes less is more. By the 1-year mark, after what my brothers now jokingly call the Great Mortgage Rebellion, things had shifted dramatically in our family. My parents were settled in their new, smaller house, which they'd actually made quite cozy. Dad had fully embraced working with some of the high-end clients I'd connected him with, and his business was doing better than ever. Mom had started taking paralegal courses at the community college. Just for fun, she claimed, but I could see the spark in her eyes when she talked about it. At Grandma's 81st birthday dinner, much more low-key than the previous year's celebration, Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. I wanted to thank you, she said, her voice low. For what? For the wake-up call. It was harsh, but we needed it. I needed it. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. I've spent so many years focusing on what I thought a woman's life should look like that I couldn't see all the different ways to be happy. I wasn't sure what to say, so I just nodded. I'm proud of you, she continued. Not despite your choices, but because of them. You knew what you wanted, and you didn't let anyone, not even your pushy mother, tell you otherwise. I felt something shift and settle in my chest, like a book finally being closed after years of reading the same painful chapter over and over. Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. As we rejoined the party, Grandma caught my eye from across the room and gave me that knowing smile again. I couldn't help wondering how much she'd influenced this family transformation behind the scenes. Later, as we all sat around the table eating cake, my brother Jason raised his glass. To Grandma, the wisest one among us. Here, everyone, chorused. Grandma waved them off with a laugh. Wisdom is just what you call it when someone's made enough mistakes to know better. As I looked around at my imperfect, evolving family, I realized something important. Standing up for yourself doesn't always make you popular, but it does make you respected. And sometimes it even makes things better in ways you never expected. My Tesla was still parked in the driveway, my career was still thriving, and I was still happily child-free. But now, those facts existed without commentary or judgment from the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally all along. And that, my friends, is worth more than a mortgage.